I graduated high school in May of 1978. The Women's Army Corps. It was officially disbanded in 1978 when I joined. In June of 1978, I was on active duty in the U.S. Army MP Corps. So I was one of the first group of women to join the regular Army. I grew up in the small town of Madison, North Carolina. Madison is located about 20 to 25 miles north of Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm the second of 5 children. When I was growing up, my father worked for a brick-making company. And this company owned some property surrounding the facility. And on that property, they had some log cabins. My dad was able to acquire one of those log cabins for his family to live in. This log cabin that we lived in had the bare necessities. It was a roof over our head, of course, but it didn't have running water, didn't have electricity. It didn't have the amenities that we're accustomed to in our present standard of living. I remember as a young girl helping my mom bring water to the house. But we were never hungry. We didn't need for anything. We had everything we needed. My father was able to be promoted to be the first Black supervisor at this brick-making company. My mother went to a local community college, got some technical experience in key punch operating, typing, business management, and she elevated her employment through that means. Between them collectively, they were able to build a home. And so they were very proud of what they were able to accomplish through hard work. My dad also bought land and started raising tobacco on that land, so we had a farm. All of the family members had to participate on the farm. One of the things that we had to do, because my parents worked full time, is we got dropped off at the farm and we had to do chores at the farm if we weren't in school. Part of it required using equipment, so I learned how to drive a tractor at a very young age. That led to me being able to do a lot of other things that the typical young girl didn't do. I played sports with the boys in the neighborhood. So we did things like foot races, bicycle races, playing basketball, playing softball. But it was through my interaction with them is how I learned how to play sports. I was very tall at a very young age. I passed a lot of the boys in the neighborhood in height. And I was 5'11" in middle school. By the time I started high school, I started off trying out for the girls' freshman basketball team. After a few practices, my coach realized that my skills were pretty elevated and I didn't need to be on the freshman team. So I was placed on the varsity team as a freshman. I was a very competitive person, quiet but competitive. I believed I could do anything I tried to do and set my mind to do. When I was a junior in high school, we had some recruiters that came. This particular coach was interested in me. She ultimately did offer me a scholarship. I realized that scholarship wasn't going to cover everything that was required financially for me to go to college. Knowing that my parents had worked so hard and I had 3 younger siblings still at home, what I didn't want to do is have my parents burdened by an additional expense of paying for me to go to college. So I went to see a recruiter. And in some discussions with the Army recruiter, I realized that I could get a college degree while on active duty. I could play sports, while on active duty, and I could earn a living while on active duty. It wouldn't be an expense for my parents at the age of 18. So rather than going to college and burdening my parents with this additional expense, I chose to join the military. And I joined on the delayed entry program, which means that I was still in high school at the time I made a commitment to the military. But they would allow me to finish high school before actually going on active duty. So that's what I opted to do. I went through a whole list of things that I was qualified for. I wanted to do something in the helping profession, but I didn't want to be stuck in an office. That's not where my skill sets suited me. I wanted to do something to help people. So I chose the Military Police Corps. My first duty station was at Fort McClellan, Alabama. That's where I went to basic training and advanced individual training. There was very few females that were present. We didn't have enough people to make a full-size platoon. Right off the bat, I was identified as the platoon guide, is what they called it. You work directly with the drill sergeants to provide oversight and leadership for your platoon or your company. Some of my peers, females, they didn't know how to do their laundry, didn't know how to polish their boots. They didn't know how to do a lot of things that we were inspected on a regular basis. And being a platoon guide, if they fell short on an inspection, I was held accountable. I decided we would identify who could do things the best, who could polish boots the best. We would group up, we would pair up, and I would jump in too, and we would just get it done. Not realizing and recognizing that later on, that same concept would be something that I would depend on and rely on to be successful in the military. By the time I left from basic training in AIT, I'd also been identified to be one of about 4 women to go to Aberdeen Proving Grounds to test some new equipment that they were trying to incorporate primarily for women. And nothing we tried, nothing they gave us or had us test worked. We used funnels, we used buttons, we used zippers, and all kinds of things. None of it worked. So that's one task we weren't able to accomplish, is to come up with a way to do that. But that's just to give you an idea of some of the things they were ill prepared to address when they incorporated women in the regular Army. I was transported to my first duty station, which was at Fort Lee, Virginia. I was assigned to the 555th Military Police Company. When I arrived at my first duty station, I realized I was the only female MP there. I was excited about being assigned to do my patrol duties as a military police. But as I'm in processing, I find out that I'm not being put on the schedule to work the law enforcement duties. I'm working in the office. I didn't know how to type. I didn't take typing or anything like that when I was in school. Didn't want to work in an office. I wanted to do law enforcement. That's what I wanted to do. I was told that I would be going to typing school and I would be starting that very next week. They had already registered me. It was on the base, and that's where I needed to report to learn how to type. That was going to be my secondary occupational specialty. I knew that this wasn't going to work. When we had formations, which we would have regularly when they were in a training cycle, during our combat support operations and training, we had a massive formation every morning. I wasn't even assigned to a squad or a platoon. I was a single woman standing out there like lost and no place to be. I wasn't a part of the group that I was supposed to be working with. Well, that generated a lot of discussions amongst my peers. Rightfully so. Why is she not out working? Why is she being treated differently? Why this? Why that? Well, just like them, I had the same questions. Why? Without using the words sexual harassment, that's exactly what was happening. I know it was wrong, and I knew that it was making a barrier for me to be able to integrate with my peers. So after it was reported to the first sergeant and commander, I was put on the road to work, and I was able to do those things that everybody else was doing. While I was there, I was able to start my family. My oldest son was born there. Then after my son was born, it was time for me to decide whether I was going to stay in the military, re-enlist, go to a new duty station, or if I was going to get out. Although it started off pretty difficult for me, things had turned around and things were going smoothly. Now I have my little family. Things are going better. I'm able to work and do the job that I joined the military for. So I decided that I would stay in. Me and my family ended up being stationed in Hawaii. I was assigned to the Schofield Barracks Military Police Company in Hawaii. Got promoted to sergeant and pretty much spent my tour doing investigative work and supervising investigators. When I left Hawaii, I ultimately was assigned to Fort Meade, Maryland. While I was there, I was assigned to the 293rd Military Police Company. Assigned as an operations sergeant, received another promotion. I also was blessed to have my second child while I was there. So I had my second son. 6 months from the time that he was born, I had to be in Germany. I worked military police operations and transitioned to the MP Company headquarters. And I was also given responsibility for liaison with the U.S. Forces Police. The U.S. Forces Police was a combination of Air Force and Army. And I remained the liaison or coordinator with them until I transitioned from there and came back to the States and was assigned to Fort McClellan, Alabama. I was assigned as an instructor, responsible for giving training to leaders. While I was an instructor there, I had a supervisor. Like every position in the military, you report to someone. We had routine graduations after training, and we would have a significant graduation event. Sometimes they would be held on base, sometimes they were held off base. If they were held off base, it was called a dining out. One of those dining outs, my supervisor became relatively intoxicated. After the actual dinner, we had a ballroom that we went to, and they were playing music and just socializing. Well, at this event, he asked me if I wanted to dance, and I declined. He came and asked me again. I declined. The next time he asked, he actually tried to physically force me to engage in a dance with him. So at the end of this event, I had actually engaged in a physical altercation with my supervisor. Not a thing that you'd ever imagine would happen. I was very disturbed by it. Didn't know exactly how I was going to handle it or deal with it. But by Monday morning, I was called in to our headquarters and asked about that event. What happened? So I was pretty disturbed by it. I was disturbed because you're calling me in asking me about something you're already aware of. I'm not going to let this determine my success or failure in the military. So the Sergeant Major of the Academy came up with a corrective action plan that was to be implemented in dealing with this particular person. But before that happened, I had an encounter with him, my supervisor, one-on-one, and let him know that was never going to happen to me again, ever. My marriage had failed. I'm struggling with being a single mom. I have 2 sons that I have to raise full-time in the military. And so I have to focus on that. My responsibility as a soldier is to continue to perform at my peak and meet the expectations that I vowed to meet. I raised my hand and agreed to do. My responsibility as a mother is to nurture and provide for my children. That I had to accomplish as well. I have to do them both, and I have to do them independently. I have to do them alone. And so it's a challenge. I didn't need the extra burden. So I had to shed some of that weight and focus on what really mattered, which is continuing to serve my country the best I can and to raise my children to be responsible young men. And I was committed to all of it. I knew this is what I was intended to do. And I was vowed not to anybody else but myself that I was going to continue on that path, and that's exactly what I did. But it was a hard time. This is also when I was assigned to become a drill sergeant. After I successfully completed drill sergeant school, I was being promoted from staff sergeant to sergeant first class. I became a senior drill sergeant as an E7. So I spent the entire time I was a drill sergeant as a senior drill sergeant. And I was the only female in that company. Made it a little challenging in some regards, but the biggest thing is now more females are being recruited, more females are coming into the military. So throughout my couple of years as being a senior drill sergeant, I was able to see that there was a lot more women joining the military. When I concluded my time as a senior drill sergeant, I was selected to become a drill sergeant instructor. I was the only female doing this job. I was again assigned to Germany. This time, I was assigned to the 284th Military Police Company in Frankfurt. I became ultimately the first sergeant. Just as I was being promoted to first sergeant, I was also deployed to Bosnia.
Just 2 weeks ago in Dayton, Ohio, the warring parties in Bosnia agreed to put down their arms, to pull back their armies and their heavy weapons, to hold free elections, to start rebuilding their homes, their towns, and their lives. But they need help to do that, and they have asked America and our NATO allies and other willing countries to provide it. They need that help because after nearly 4 years of terrible brutality, trust is in short supply in Bosnia, and they all trust you to do the job right.
We had really short notice that we were going to have to leave. It was just a war-torn country. There were many homeless people, so it was a very difficult place to be in. When I found out that I had to deploy, I had to come up with a plan for my children. That's one of the things that everyone who's a service member and has children need to understand that you need to have available is a family care plan. And it doesn't need just to be something on paper. It needs to be able to work. It has to be able to work. You never know when you're going to have to activate it, and your children's well-being is in the balance if it doesn't work. I had to rely on one of my neighbors who was very close to me and my children. They'd spend nights there. They were very close. And she was a full-time mom. She wasn't working, and she was able to care for my kids. But I think that was the most difficult time I ever had in the military. It wasn't the deployment itself. It was leaving my children. I couldn't communicate with them. We were on a train for an extended amount of time with no phone communications at all. I had one of my soldiers who got run over by that train and ended up passing from getting his leg cut off and gangrene. Couldn't even go back to see him. He died without any of us being able to be by his side. And to make it even more of a situation or circumstance, I had been selected by someone in the military to be interviewed on Life magazine. So I had people accompanying me along this trip. They were on the train. When we arrived at our destination, they were there for weeks. The loss of the first soldier in this event, non-combat related, but still the loss of a life. Me leaving my children behind and cannot communicate with them is no way possible. I was at the highest point of stress that I've ever had in my life. And I questioned whether this is something that I should be doing. But one thing I also know is I'm not a quitter. I wasn't going to quit. Wasn't going to refuse to go. And I am the first sergeant. Not only do I need to be there, I need to be in support of others who have family issues potentially, or other things that are distracting, for them to be able to deploy. My responsibility is to them. We were the first military police unit there, responsible for providing security for the 1st Armored Division as they came in to do their job. We provided security for an engineer battalion who built a bridge over the Sava River for us to get from Croatia to Bosnia. Once that bridge was built, safe to traverse, we send a convoy over. I'm in the convoy, but I'm not where I normally would be, and I'm not with my normal driver. My driver is at the front of this convoy. They go across the river. They're traversing this open field. He runs over a landmine in his vehicle. I get notification that my driver is now in a situation where he's been hit by a landmine and he's injured severely. There was a delay in my ability to communicate with the medevac team, but finally they get him. I'm going to the MASH unit to try to make sure he's okay. They arrive after me, but thank God he made it through this event. I was there when he received his Purple Heart. He didn't succumb to this injury, bad as it was. So I didn't lose another soldier, at least from this incident or this event, but I thought I had. One of the things that I accomplished was I was selected to participate in a leadership club for those who prove to be exceptional leaders. And you have to matriculate through several panels of senior military personnel, not just in your career field. And that's one of the things that I'm most proud of from my time in the military. So when I left, I transferred to Fort McPherson. While I was there, I was able to complete my bachelor's degree in criminal justice. I was approaching my 20-year mark with the military. I'd been promoted. I worked in the MP station as operations sergeant. But after being there for about a year, I get pregnant with my third child. And it's right on the cusp of me reaching my 20-year mark. I was also being considered for the Sergeant's Major's Academy, which is a year-long school. And once you successfully complete that school, that training, then they'll assign you wherever they need you. I decided that I did not want to leave an infant with a parent to take care of for that amount of time, and I'm not available to help. So I decided it was time for me to retire. After receiving my master's degree, my total time working at the university was just a little over 4 years. And then I started my employment with the federal government. I started as area commander for Federal Protective Service. While I was assigned as an area commander, one of the responsibilities that I was given was to assist in preparing for the G8 Summit in Sea Island, Georgia. By the time the event came around, I was the primary coordinator for all security operations of federal properties during that event. Our operation included the deployment of federal law enforcement personnel from across the country. I worked for the Department of Homeland Security, Federal Protective Service for the remainder of my 21 years of service with the federal government in a law enforcement capacity. I was promoted for the director position. As the regional director, we had 8 states, and that incorporated the administrative side of operations as well. Budget, oversight of investigations, oversight of security operations, and law enforcement. I had oversight over all of those things now. The 8 states that we were responsible for included Kentucky, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Florida. Travel was necessary to perform these duties. I had to travel about and integrate myself with the federal community in every one of these states. I had a daughter also after retiring from the military. I again became a single parent, raising those 2 kids. I made a conscious decision that I didn't want to move or relocate again after I retired from the military. I wanted my children to be stable as they went through school, to be stable with their family, extended family, and getting to know them better. Those are things that my 2 older children did not have based on my time in the military, and I wanted to make sure my younger 2 children did have that. 21 years of service as a federal law enforcement officer looked very different from the military, the 20 years in the military. But there's one commonality: the things that I did as a child, the teamwork that I learned, and commitment to family as a child, the hard work and effort that I saw my parents engage in for our survival and success has been the core entity in me doing what I've done my whole working life. And so I am so grateful for the time that I spent and I am honored to have been able to serve my country.
You've been fighting more than anyone should, but I see your strength in every breath you take. The nights are long and the silence loud, but I still hear your heart beneath the clouds. Every silence, every night can't dim your flame. You're still the same, strong and brave. They don't see the battles that you face, but I see a soul the world can't erase. You're the light in the storm, the calm in my sea. When the world goes dark, you're the peace in me. Even when you fall, I see you rise. You're my hero in real life. So hold on, you're not